Hello, thank you for being with us this afternoon. I'm Ellie Witter, Associate Director of Alumni Engagement for the Miami University Alumni Association. We are very excited to be partnering with Hillel at Miami University for their Women Crush Wednesday speaker series. Joining us today is Hillel Executive Director Whitney Fisch and Miami student Madison McQueen to engage in conversation with Miami University Board of Trustees member, alumna from the class of 1980, and the President and CEO of Dayton Children's Hospital, Debbie Feldman. In today's conversation, Madison and Whitney will talk with Debbie about her journey to her current position as the CEO and president of Dayton Children's Hospital, what it was like navigating an entire hospital through a pandemic, while also joining Miami's Board of Trustees at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. Well, we'll also talk about what Miami was like in the 80s and hear just how much it's changed since then. There will be time at the end for questions, so please submit your questions with the link just below the screen. And now I will turn it over to Whitney, Madison, and Debbie. Welcome, ladies. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. Just a word on Women Crush Wednesdays. Women Crush Wednesdays is an opportunity to highlight women leaders doing incredible work in all areas of art, tech, science, community work, and activism. Our goal for this program is to give students an opportunity to not only meet women change makers, but afford them the opportunity to actively engage with these leaders in a way that they wouldn't be able to otherwise, to be inspired, gain motivation, and maybe find themselves in the narrative of someone else's journey. And we are so blessed and so lucky to have Madison McQueen leading our interviews, really taking the reins on this program. And I turn it over to her. Thank you so much. And thank you, Debbie, for being here.
Yes, thank you, Whitney, for that introduction. Well, here we are on this beautiful snowy day. I kind of just want to be outside and just bask in the presence of the snow. We did get a 2-hour delay yesterday, which was pretty crazy for college. Anyway, let's get into you, Debbie. It's so nice to see you here. And we're going to kind of start just with, I guess, as early as we can. So what was it like when you were a child? What were you thinking that you wanted to be when you grew up, when you were younger?
Well, first of all, Maddie, thanks for having me. It's great to be on with Miami students, and I wish I could be there in person. When I was a kid, I had lots of different things that I wanted to do. I don't know that I had that one focus area that said, this is, what I want to be when I grow up. That sort of came later. So, I went through the typical stages. I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be a singer. I wanted to be a mom. So, there were lots of different things I wanted to be. And my mother was a stay-home mom. I had a very traditional family where dad went to work, mom stayed home. But I was lucky that they always indulged whatever new idea I had as time went on.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just right off the bat, just hearing how you're a CEO and president of Dayton Hospital is just amazing. One, because you're a woman and, we're here for Women Crush Wednesday. But also just one, I never knew those positions existed. So this is 3 different things that I realized, but also just to be in such a power, a position of leadership in the community, while also being able to create change. So let's talk about more about your job, just because I'm really curious about it, and I'm sure other people are, especially what you do.
Well, this is a great job. I just feel blessed every day to come into work. So Dayton Children's is a children's hospital where we take care of kids from birth up to 21, depending upon what they need. We have 181 beds, and we take care of everything from neonatal conditions to behavioral health. And we also, our mission is the relentless pursuit of optimal health for every child within our reach. So you can see that the word health care isn't there, it's health. What we know is that only 20% of a child's health is determined by the health care they receive. And the rest of it, some genetics, but a lot of it is by what we call those social determinants of health, where a child lives, the amount of food they get, if it's healthy or not, the housing, is it safe, the schools they go to, the behaviors that they and their parents engage in. And so we at Dayton Children's are very focused on really wrapping ourselves around a child's total health. So we spend a lot of time both taking care of acute healthcare conditions, but also really out in the community trying to build a better environment for our kids to grow and thrive in. So it's a great job. I love it. I've been here almost 9 years now. I work with some of the most compassionate and talented people you could ever meet. who really put kids first.
That's amazing. I didn't realize how much a hospital just encompasses, but I really like that holistic approach because it is so necessary, especially when you're like, again, talking about the health and just treating people, especially when we're trying to be like a bigger community.
Right.
So this is your like current job. Tell me about your first job out of college.
So, yeah, I think a little bit just to sort of say how I got to Dayton, Ohio might be helpful because I was born and raised in Washington, D.C., and my entire family world really existed between Washington and New York. So I was a provincial Easterner, had never been off the East Coast and ended up at Miami University. And I really had every expectation of going back to Washington. I grew up in Washington in the 60s and early 70s. And so for some of you, you may know that that was the time we called the Great Society programs. There was a lot of real belief that government could make a difference in the lives of people, and a lot of new programs, things like Medicaid and TANF, as we know, welfare as we know it, many of these programs, public housing came up during that time. So I had this great goal. I was going to go to college. I was going to major in political science. I was going to come back to Washington, get a big public policy job, and save the world. And a funny thing happened on the way to doing that is that I met my husband. So we are a Miami merger and loved our new, our little masks that we just got. We get so if any of you are going to someday be a Miami merger, you'll get a Valentine's Day card from Miami and a little gift on Valentine's Day. So my husband was from Dayton. And so it was a big change. It was not what I sort of had expected life to be. And I think it was, and not only was marrying my husband the best thing that ever happened to me, but moving to Dayton really was the best thing that ever happened to me. But I needed to make a change in my thinking. And that was that I still really wanted to remain committed to public service, but I needed to really focus myself at the local level. So it was my first time, the first change in career direction that I needed to make. So I went on to graduate school and I got a master's in public administration, really focusing on local government. And my first job was at Montgomery County as a budget analyst intern.
How was that? Sounds very mathy.
Well, my concentration was always in public finance. And actually, I double majored at Miami in economics. It was not great, to be very honest with you. I was thrilled that I got a job. So that was really great. It was $5 an hour. And the county at the time was not what I had envisioned government to be. It was very political. There was a lot of patronage. There was a lot of, it was just really not, I wasn't really able to be the professional public administrator that I had envisioned in my mind I would be. And so I really wasn't sure what I was going to do and what I wanted to be. And then I had my first child and stayed home with her and was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And then I got an offer for something that I couldn't turn down and returned back to Montgomery County.
Yeah, I actually, I applied to Miami with a poli-sci major, and then I interned at the mayor's office in Toledo, Ohio, and it kind of like how you experienced like a couple like years earlier, but it was definitely not what I was expecting. So
Right.
I'm going to be a teacher, but I think it's just wonderful how many different ways you can engage with the community and still be making change actively in the community without doing the obvious, like be in government. So going back to your Miami days, I think it's so exciting to have you as just like a pair of eyes on how Miami used to be and like how it compares to today, even though with the pandemic going on, obviously there's a lot of differences, especially for the freshmen this year. But just like, I guess just tell me what like Miami was like in like your eyes, like if you could, or maybe the differences that you see from like then and now.
Well, I set eyes on Miami and fell in love with it the first time I drove into Oxford. It was everything I envisioned college should be. My mother and I used to watch a lot of old movies together, and it just was that picture. It was a place that really you could just immerse yourself in anything and really sort of be separate from the world. So I really did love that. Though at the time I thought I was going to go back to Washington. So I wasn't really looking for that big city experience or that, that some students may be looking for. I kind of have to laugh looking out at the snow because my first year at Miami was the winter of '77, and was one of the worst blizzards Ohio had ever seen. And you said that you got off school. Literally, when I came out to Oxford, they told me that the weather was about the same as it is in Washington. And then I think that first year we got 20 or 30 inches of snow. And the next year was this blizzard of '78, which was an even bigger blizzard. And I don't think we've ever had anything like that since in Ohio. And so it was a big adjustment. So we got 3 days off of school, I think that day.
Oh, wow.
But it's changed a lot. I would tell you that if you think Uptown is small now, when we were there, it was much smaller. The only alcohol you could access in Oxford was 3-2 beer. And we did not have the restaurant or sort of bar scene that you even have now, which of course isn't even that big. But to some extent, and there's a lot of new buildings that, didn't exist, but I think a lot has not changed. The focus on undergraduate education and that personal relationship that you have with professors that you really get at Miami. I don't think any of that has changed. We have just great memories. Obviously, I met my husband there, and we still have many, many good friends that we made when we were in Oxford.
That's wonderful. I just want to take a quick second to remind the audience that we are accepting live questions for the second half of this series, this specific conversation. So please send in any conversations you might have for Debbie. So going more off of with Miami, what was your favorite place to be? Mine is low key just the library or Upham Hall. But I guess Uptown or even just campus wise, what was your favorite spot when you were here?
I probably spent the most time in the library. There's no question. I was definitely a library hanger-oner. And then after that, we would go to what we called the Res, which was our student union at the time. And again, the student union you have now is just phenomenal. I also worked at, I don't know if you still have the 1809 room. At that time, it was the faculty dining room, and it was in the Res, and I was a waitress there. So I spent a lot of time there as well. And then if we went uptown, usually it was, and I don't think it's there anymore either, it was Al and Larry's, which was a bar that we went to. But if I had to say where did I spend most time, it was in the library.
I get that. I actually have a job now at the library, so I feel half my time is just going to be there, which I'm not mad at. I love the library. Who was your favorite professor, or if you can't choose, you can give a couple of professors that are just memorable to you from your time at Miami?
Yeah. There was a professor in political science named Rio Christensen. He died a few years ago, and he was by far and away my favorite professor. He really inspired me, and I just hung on every word. He was very much able to help sort of put current events as well as past events in perspective, and really continue to motivate me to believe that government really could make a difference in the lives of people, which I still believe today. I'm a still strong proponent of public service, and it would recommend it to anyone. Unfortunately, it's gotten a bad rap. And even worse in recent years, but I do feel it was, an incredibly impactful part of my life.
Right. No, that makes it's just, I like hearing about, I guess, just how different experiences, whether it be with professors or specific situations, have led people to where they are now. It's always kind of interesting to, think about the butterfly effect of everyone's lives and see what was that pivotal moment. Which I guess now I'm going to ask you, what do you think that would be what would be your pivotal moment that has put you to where you are now?
Oh, it was definitely, as I mentioned, I wasn't really happy in my job. Didn't feel like I was getting the opportunity to really do anything meaningful. Had my first child. She was about, maybe 6 or 8 weeks. And the then county administrator called me and said that he had just let go the human resources director at the county, and would I take the job? So I was 26 years old and I had no HR background whatsoever. And it really was my decision to take that job and go back. That really was the pivotal moment in my career.
So now that you're a president and CEO of a hospital, tell me about like a professional setback you've had, whether it is like at the hospital or maybe even earlier in your career that like you learned from. It could honestly even be now with the pandemic, because obviously that is very present and a very like large issue for a lot of people. But what was a setback you had that you were able to overcome, and how did you overcome that?
Well, I've been very blessed in my career in that I really have had, successive opportunities to really grow and take on new things. I would say, I wouldn't call them setbacks, but when you work in the public sector, unfortunately, small things can become very big things in the media. So dealing with media issues that weren't always favorable, it can really sort of make you want to hibernate sometimes when you see your name, in the paper and it's not in a positive light, or you get, and increasingly now with social media, even more of that. So really learning how to not look at any situation like it is the all-encompassing end of the world, but being able to balance that and know that to some extent this too shall pass has been really helpful. With the pandemic, it has, obviously taken over to a large extent a lot of the thinking and the energy of us here at the hospital, as we've had to work so hard to keep our staff safe, to keep children safe. It has had a significant impact on our business, as frankly, when kids don't go to school and don't play sports, they don't get sick. And so we've seen a lot of our great, exciting plans slow down. And there's kind of a joke here at the hospital. They say that we do things at the speed of Feldman, because I am somebody who's really always wanting to do more, really wanting to push us to do more, because I feel like what we're doing is so important, and our families need us, our kids need us. And so it has been hard to slow down and and really recognize that there's just so much bandwidth that our staff has to be able to do what we need to do. So through it all, I've been really committed to the fact that we weren't going to just stay still, but maybe we needed to move a little slower than we might ordinarily have moved.
Right. A lot of ways that, obstacles come up, but I really do like how you kind of see it as not setbacks, and just like pushing forward, because, there's always like more to come, and like everything, I always say everything happens for a reason, and it all ends up working out. So
everything ebbs and flows, there's ups and downs, and you just can't stay so focused on that moment you're in that you lose sight of the bigger picture.
Exactly. So as the president and CEO, what would you say is the difference between being a boss and a leader, and like where's, I guess, the overlap in that, or where do you think people get confused between those two?
Well, to me, a leader inspires. To me, a leader always starts with the why and is able to communicate the why, and then works with the team all the way through the organization to develop the how and the what. A boss rarely starts with the why, and oftentimes doesn't necessarily include their team in the how and the what. And so I think that's a real difference. A leader has to help their team really understand where they're going and why they're going there. The why is so important, because people need to find that intrinsic meaning in whatever they're doing. And you really can't find that if you don't understand the why. And you're always just being told the what and the how.
What advice would you give to if you want to say specifically women in this field, I don't know if there has been any struggles for you as a woman in this field, or just generally to anyone really starting off in public administration and just having trouble, I guess, getting a jump start on it.
Well, I think there's a few things. First of all, find something you love, whatever that is, and stick with it, because you'll do well if you're doing something you love. So, I really believe that. There were a lot of people that said, why would you go into public service? You could make a whole lot more money doing something else. But I loved it. And if you can find something where more days you enjoy your job than you don't, I think that's a win, because there's going to be some bad days in every job. But if you know that if you can step back and say, overall, I enjoy going to work more than I don't, I think that's a win. This is a tough time, and I think you just have to acknowledge that. Looking for a job in the age of COVID is going to be very different, but it's not going to last forever. And so the first job's not going to be the last job. So, I think that's really important to remember. You got to work hard. If you want to do well, you've got to be willing to work hard. You got to put the time and the effort in to prepare. And you don't really, just doesn't come. You have to work for it. Value yourself. And as women, we tend to hold back. And so that's something we're all learning. Even at my point in my career, I'm still learning, that not to hold back, not to feel like, look around and see what everybody else is doing first. We need to value ourselves and know that we have a lot to bring to the table. And then the last thing I would say is, as women, eventually many of us are going to have families.
Right.
And so it really comes down to balance. And, it's really not life work balance. It's really life work blend. You don't come to work and completely forget about your kids, and you don't go home. And if you really, really believe in what you're doing, you don't completely forget about your job. But it's how do you blend that together, knowing that sometimes one or the other is going to probably take center stage. And then for me, the last part of sort of that balance has been a third piece, which is don't keep commit. You need to have friends. You need to have involvement with others outside your immediate family, outside your job. There's that piece of personal connections with friendship groups, with your community. I think people get a lot more from being involved and volunteering in the community than they ever give. And so we tend to become so tunnel visioned with our kids and our work that sometimes we lose that third pillar, which to me is friends and community.
Speaking of community, you have recently you're now on a board for Miami University, which is great, just like having you as an alum, but then also with like the experience you have now as like a very prominent member, I think, of the community. So what has that been like? And like, how have you felt like you've been able to bring change or like lead Miami, I guess, into like its future, like its golden future, if you will?
Well, I've only been on the board not even a year.
Right.
So I'm not going to attempt to say that I have had an impact. And I joined right before the pandemic hit. So, one of the perks of joining the Miami board was going to be coming back to Oxford more frequently, which I've not been able to do. But what I have been able to do is get to know these really committed board members and been so impressed with the leadership, the staff leadership of Miami, what they have had to go through to bring students back and their commitment to students. They worked hard to personally contact every single Miami student when you all were remote, professors or administrators reaching out. And I just, the commitment to the students, to Miami's success, to the impact that Miami can make in the world has just been so impressive to me. I really look forward to meeting these people in person and finding the ways that I can contribute. Obviously, healthcare is a huge job, career field. And with Miami's commitment to a new academic building and really growing those career fields, I hope to be able to contribute to that. And of course, back to my original roots in the public sector as well. So I hope I'll be able to make those contributions and be able to make a difference. But I'm not going to even say that I've had a chance to do that at this point.
Very fair. Right. It was kind of a hard question I gave you for that. Just another reminder that you are free to submit live questions, and we'll be happy to take them a bit later on. So Debbie, like we've said, you're very involved in the community. Your job's about the community. I've also, community has been very important for me, and like the different circles we have of like the ones that connect and whatnot. I'm sure a lot of students feel the way I do, especially when you're in school or even when you're like getting close to getting out of school, especially if like you're in a new place like Oxford versus I'm from Toledo. How would you advise people to really like find a way to be more actively participating in their like broader community?
Well, I think this is a time where there's a lot of sense of activism and a sense that people want to be involved from both. And then unfortunately, the pandemic has prevented a lot of physical involvement. But again, I think we have to believe that the pandemic is going to be behind us. So, again, I would say, think about what is your particular interest. And then find one of those organizations that is doing that and say, I'm here. What is one of the things I love so much about the Midwest, and I said moving to Dayton was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me, is that this is a community, this is a state, these are communities like Toledo and Dayton and others that welcome people to get involved. So it's just a matter of picking up the phone and saying, I want to be there, whether it's the food bank, whether it's a homeless shelter, whether it's big brothers, big sisters. Do you want to work with kids? Do you want to work with the elderly? And say, I'm here. I want to do something. Some people don't want to get involved in that, person to person way. They want to be in the back. They want to file papers. They want to do something. But you'll meet the most interesting people out of your comfort zone. We all have the tendency to be, for our friendship groups, to be very much like ourselves. Mm. And so if that's the only place we find companionship or people to be with, then we're always going to be with people like ourselves, and we're going to grow the most when we're with people who are not like ourselves, and we're also going to find how much we have in common with them. So I would say find something that isn't necessarily in your comfort zone or where you're used to being, and get involved, and just say, I'm here.
Yeah, no, that's perfect advice. I think a lot of times people forget how easy it is, I think, to just do things. It's just that extra step of like actually doing it. I think people sometimes get nervous of like making that affirmative action. But sometimes that's really the only way to start getting the ball rolling. So not only are you a woman in our community who's like doing amazing things, but you're also a Jewish woman in our community. So tell me about how the role Judaism has been playing in your choice of career and how it's really just played in the choices you made in your life.
Well, first of all, Judaism has always been central to my life. I was very involved in all the Jewish youth groups, and they really were the center of my life as I grew up. And here in Dayton, I'm the past president of the Jewish Federation, and my children went to Jewish day school. So Judaism has always been central to me, and I do believe that it foundationally was part of my commitment to public service, right? Whether it's Tikkun Olam, our commitment to repair the world. The quote that has always driven me is that quote by Rabbi Hillel: "If I am not for myself, who will be for me? If I am only for myself, what am I? And if not now, when?" So I believe all three of those things. I believe that we have to always take care of ourselves, that we're not martyrs, and Judaism doesn't teach us to be martyrs. Judaism teaches us that we have responsibility to ourselves, and that there's nothing wrong with enjoying life and doing positive things for ourselves. But it also teaches us that we absolutely have a commitment to the world, both to the Jewish world. And so from a philanthropic standpoint, in my own time, I've always said that I have to have my Jewish philanthropy as well as my general community philanthropy, that I have to have both. Mm-hmm. And then back to what I said before, it can't be I'll get to that. It has to be now, right? I mean, we can't say, well, I'm too busy now. I'm too busy now. I'm too busy now. And then we never do anything outside of, and that basic work of ourselves and our families. So that's really, to me, what has been foundational in everything I do. Judaism is always, in my heart. It's always, it's my world, my home world. And I think it really is supportive of everything I've done. And thankfully, I've always worked in an environment, though I've pretty much always been the only Jewish person, or one of the few, that I've worked with people that have been interested in learning about Judaism. I've always, been very clear that I'm a Jewish woman and that I celebrate Jewish holidays, but I also love learning about other people's traditions. And here at the hospital, we have physicians and people from every tradition, from Hindu to Muslim to Jewish to Christian. And we really try to celebrate all those traditions and recognize that they all bring the same commitment to children and to our community.
Speaking, this is like a fun question that I just thought of, Jewish holidays. There's so many of them. Purim's coming up. What is your favorite Hamantashen flavor?
Oh, my favorite Hamantashen flavor is definitely a raspberry or a strawberry for sure. My daughter would tell you my Hamantashen generally don't come out that great. But now that I have a granddaughter, she's doing a really good job of improving of my efforts.
And for those viewers who aren't familiar, Hamantashen are triangle-shaped cookies with jam or like some type of filling in the middle. Very delicious. Mine are apricot or raspberry.
Okay,
it's hard to choose. Yes. I like doing all the flavors. I like my options.
I do too. It is one of my favorite Jewish foods.
Me too. Everyone always loves them too. Like people who I like share them with, they're like, I need the recipe.
Absolutely.
So kind of like another, I guess, just broader question. And this could be one of our like last questions you answer before we start doing questions, but from the audience, excuse me. What would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned so far? Just like, I guess, being a human being on this earth, I always like to hear, I guess, what wisdom people can impart to the younger generations and what they'd say, like, they've learned throughout their life, or like their biggest thing that has like really been a sticking point for them.
Wow. I think I would say that things are going to happen in life, and most of the time we can overcome them. Sometimes unfortunately not, but as long as you have your health and your family's health, really everything else will work itself out. I've been in situations so many times where, somebody can really everything can be going great. And then all of a sudden, either someone you love or yourself has a health challenge, and nothing else then seems to matter. So, keeping it all in perspective. And everything does work out for the most part, and enjoy it. Stay in the moment and enjoy what you're doing. If we're always wishing we were doing something else, if we're always envying something else, then we don't enjoy what we're in. And I guess as I'm getting older, I'm hanging on to each of those moments now, because, we don't know what's around the corner. There's a sort of a saying, man plans, God laughs. And, don't spend all your time planning about what's next. Enjoy what you're in.
To go along with that, obviously there's like people graduating soon, especially like this week we've been, we're giving out bags to our seniors, little goodie bags for them. But what advice would you give to women who are graduating this year? It can pertain specifically to COVID and how that's changing things, or just advice you'd give to any female who's graduating.
Well, again, this is going to be a time none of us have been through this. So, I'm giving advice to folks who, and I, can imagine what it would be like to start looking for a job in a time where everything is virtual, and, making those personal connections, which, have such an impact oftentimes on jobs, are harder to make. So just go for it, and don't let the pandemic sort of be your excuse. It is what it is. Get out there, whether you have to do it through Zoom or however you have to do it. Go for what you want to go for, and know that this is not going to last forever. And just don't let it be your excuse not to do what you want to do or not to go forward with your plans. Just know that you may have to modify a little bit as you go along. As I said before, go for what you enjoy and what really you can have some fun with. But again, the first job's not going to be the last job, right? So, it's going to be okay.
I just thought of it. I'm sure there are some people listening, or maybe some people who couldn't listen and will be listening in to the recording later, who are very fascinated by what you do. Do you have offer any internships or something? Of course, again, COVID is changing things, but is there any way to be able to, I guess, either work with you or work with a hospital or work on that level for people who are interested?
So I'm a really big proponent of internships. I believe they are absolutely critical. First of all, we think we want to do certain things, and then we get into the workplace and we're like, no, this is not at all what I want to do. And so I really am a big proponent of internships. We do offer a number of them, some paid, some not paid. And we always, do our best to try to find as many things as we possibly can. We actually start with kids. We actually have a health camp in the summer for young kids, and really, do all kinds of scholarships for nursing students. Really working to diversify our nursing team. So we're big proponents of internships and work environments here at Dayton Children's.
Wonderful. I also have to say, I did this last week with Hallie, but your outfit is wonderful. I'm a person who pays attention to these things, and I'm like, she looks so chic.
I'm not a wardrobe consultant like Hallie. But thank you. Actually, it's during the age of COVID, we tend to dress down a little bit more than we have in the past. So I'm not saying I dress quite as nicely as this every day.
I understand. No, I actually, my job is, I'm in special collections, so we're working in person on a rotating schedule. And so now I'm like, oh no, I have to start looking nice again, especially after winter break.
Yeah. No, we've been here the whole time, so we haven't been working from home, obviously, but we know lots of folks have been.
Yeah. So we talked about advice and things you'd give to other people helping them. What would be advice you'd give to yourself? Your younger self? It can be any age. I don't know, whatever age you thought you really needed that advice for.
Well, there's certainly, when you first decide to be a working mom, you worry, are you going to do either well? And you particularly worry, will your children get what they need to get? Almost none of my friends worked. So I was really, and that of course has changed a lot, but in my day, so to speak, almost none of my friends worked and had children. And so, I worried that, my kids wouldn't turn out okay, or I wouldn't succeed in my job, either one. And I would tell my younger self that it worked out and I have great kids and they're doing great things. And obviously I was successful in my career. So I would tell myself that. I would tell myself to listen and really take the time to listen. That's something, I think we all need to remember to do. We can learn so much when we stop talking and we listen to other people. So I would remind myself of that. So I think those are some things that maybe I would tell my younger self.
Right. No, of course. I think I especially like you talking about family, because I think that's honestly, at least for me and my friends, I feel like, we all talk about that we want to have kids in the future. And it always is that fear, because there is definitely still that stereotype of women supposed to be taking care of the children, but a lot of women are working now. And so where does that all fit into everything?
Right. And the pandemic has hit women particularly hard, particularly, trying to manage work and children at home has been really incredibly difficult for many, many women. And we've lost millions of women from the workforce. And so this pandemic is going to have a long-term effect on a lot of the trajectory of a lot of women's careers and a lot of their ability to provide for their children. So it is something that we have to pay attention to and make sure that somehow we allow and help those women reintegrate into the workforce once their children go back to school. This virtual school has been incredibly difficult for both parents and the children that it's impacted.
Right. Yeah, my mom's a teacher, so I get to see the sides, like her point of view, and then I have a little brother who's in kindergarten, so it has been very interesting to see how everything's working, and I just really hope that we just keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
Sorry. So you talked about your professor who was really instrumental in your life. Do you have any general mentor or role model that you've really looked up to in your life and has helped you throughout life?
I certainly had a number of people, like I said, I was given some opportunities at a very young age that many people would never have been given the opportunity to. So along with all the other advice that I give to people about careers, I always try to remember to say there's a little bit of luck in everybody's career. I don't care how good they are at what they do. But one of my early bosses, who was the county administrator before me, was a mentor to me all along. He was incredibly patient, kind, listener. I mentioned listening because I learned a lot about listening from him. And he really, he passed away about 2 years ago now. And his voice is in my ear many, many times as I'm dealing with issues and challenges. So I was very lucky to have that. As I said, there were not many women who were in roles above me at the time. So most of my mentors actually were men, but men who were very supportive of women and diversity in leadership roles.
That's wonderful. It's just great that you were able to have those people who, even though they weren't similar to you, with demographics, they still were really helpful and supportive of you. So if you're good with it, Debbie, we're going to move on to some of our questions from our audience so that we can have them participate, even if they aren't directly participating.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back, Whitney.
Thank you. It's been so lovely watching this talk. It seems like you two have known each other for years. So we got a lot of questions mainly about, Debbie, your role at Dayton Children's Hospital. So I'm just going to jump right in. Is Dayton Children's Hospital part of a larger hospital system? And are you willing to share your contact information if we wanted to reach out to you?
So first of all, yes, I'm certainly willing for you to share my contact information. And like I said, I'm really always happy to talk to folks about career opportunities, whether Dayton Children's or elsewhere. So Dayton Children's is an independent children's hospital. There's only 38 of us left. Most hospitals, if you know anything about healthcare, is getting bigger. And so we believe very strongly that we want to remain an independent children's hospital, because we believe that if the people who are making their decisions about Dayton Children's are from Dayton, they're going to put our kids and our families first. And if you know Dayton, you know that we have been through a lot of economic trauma over the last 20 or 30 years, and we've lost a lot of big companies. And so we really don't want to see that happen to our hospital. So we are very committed to remaining independent as long as we can continue to do what's best for kids.
So on that note, Ohio is very fortunate to have 3 amazing children's hospitals within the state. How do you balance collaboration and competition while still providing the best care to children in the area?
That's a great question. As somebody who knows healthcare, so good. We have 4 independent. We actually have 6 children's hospitals in Ohio. Wow. 3 of them are completely independent, and that would be Cincinnati Children. Well, 4 of them are Cincinnati Children's, Dayton Children's, Nationwide Children's in Columbus, and Akron Children's. And then the other 2, Rainbow Babies and Cleveland and Toledo Children's are part of systems. So Ohio is very unique. So whoever asked that question is absolutely right. Most states are lucky to have one. Colorado Children's for 7 states. So our children are really lucky to have independent children's hospitals. We collaborate a lot. We have a statewide association where we share a lot when it comes to quality of care, safety, these kinds of issues. But when it comes to business, we do compete. It's certainly Dayton Children's and Cincinnati Children's would be competitors, but we are able to do so and still really make sure that we're sharing best practices when it comes to kids. We believe that our families do best when they stay close to home, and that, remember, when you take care of a children's hospital has a patient, their patient isn't one person. The patient's a family. It could be the siblings of the child. It could be the parents. And when our parents, when the child has to see the doctor, our parents, for the most part, have to take off work. So the closer that care can be to home, the better that care can be for the whole family, and our parents can be at work. Many of our parents do not get paid if they're not at work. And so if they would have to go, let's say, from Dayton to Cincinnati to take their child to a specialist, they're probably taking a half day off of work. Whereas if they're coming right here to Dayton Children's, they can probably take maybe 2 hours off of work, or 3 hours. So that's why we believe so strongly in families staying as close to home as possible.
That is wonderful. And it's such a world I don't know much about. So I appreciate the lens and the perspective of thinking. And what a privilege for me that I haven't had to think about it in terms of health of my 3 young children. So thank you so much. So this is a question from a viewer who's jumping from a career in tech sales to hospital administration. So she decided to take a chance and make a career change after 20 years. She is pursuing a master's in healthcare administration. So any suggestions for making a leap from tech sales to hospital administration, or for anyone making a career change, suggestions to be successful?
Well, first of all, I think making that jump from tech into hospital administration right now is pretty fortuitous if you're going to be going from one industry to another, because frankly, healthcare is in a major transformation when it comes to tech, and particularly the digital aspects of technology. People want to communicate digitally, and they want their entire healthcare experience to be on this. So it's not just digital, it's not just IT, but it's digital and it's handheld. And so every single hospital system is putting tremendous amount of effort into their IT and digital enterprise, and are recognizing that we have a lot to learn from other industries, such as retail, such as banking. Our consumers first of all, our patients are more and more consider themselves consumers, and they don't compare their healthcare experience anymore to another hospital. They compare it to Amazon, they compare it to their banking experience, their retail experience. And so there's a lot of transferability between particularly tech or retail consumer oriented businesses to healthcare. So I would say that it's a great time to make that change. I would say study a lot about whatever you're trying to get into. So whatever that job may be, take the time to learn as much as you can about that particular job. I said early on, there's no substitute for hard work. When I made the decision to try to make that transition from the public sector to the hospital, I literally spent 3 or 4 nights a week in my study learning everything I could possibly learn about healthcare, because I knew I didn't have that healthcare, resume to back me up. So understand what's going on in healthcare, and then take whatever you're doing and see what's transferable. We say a lot, we're not focused on healthcare of 2021, we're focused on the healthcare of 2025. And that's where the successful healthcare systems are going. So I say you have a great opportunity to make a good transition.
Thank you so much. I'm sure our questioner appreciates that. I certainly do. As I made a switch from school counseling to being the executive director of a Jewish agency. I can totally understand the, nice, just trying to talk to everyone possible who came before me and did it well. So I really appreciate the perspective. Another question. So this person writes, I see in your list of accomplishments that you served in developing the community health centers in Dayton. How do you believe that prepared you for the step into the CEO role and understanding the nuances of being a leader to drive better health for the community?
So I did have the advantage being the county administrator. The counties in Ohio are responsible for all social services and human services. So I had been involved with the public health department for a long time. The county was the Medicaid eligibility determiner. So I had worked with the CEOs of the hospital systems in Montgomery County. So I had some experience, but I loved my experience as part of the development of a federally qualified health center. I think it's one of the best federal programs out there. And one of the great things about that program is that the board, the law requires that 51% of the board be consumers of that health system, of that health clinic. So it was the opportunity to be on a board with the people who are receiving the services. And so often we tend to be, we have a sense of like we know better than people who are actually in need of the services. And so this is a great program that really requires people to engage with and help create the services they are actually going to consume. So I loved it. It's done extremely well here in Dayton. It was the first federally qualified health center in Dayton. And of course, they have been on the forefront of addressing the pandemic for many of our disadvantaged communities in Dayton and really across the country.
Incredible. When did you sleep ever in the last several days?
I'm a really good sleeper. So I have
okay, good.
I'm going to put that, there's three things I would say that I would definitely say I do well. One is sleep. The other is focus. Whenever I'm able to really focus on what I'm doing. So those are, and I'm fast. I get dressed fast. I do most things fast. So I cook fast, I clean fast. So those things help.
At the speed of Feldman. You get dressed at the speed of Feldman. I love it. Some colleague must have gotten T-shirts that say that. I mean, we gotta get that somewhere. Bumper stickers.
Yeah, it was pretty funny when they started rolling that out.
So finally, when you were describing your journey, you grew up in DC. I think a point that some of our readers are interested in is what got you to Miami back in the day, in the late 70s, from DC. How did you know about it?
Well, the interesting thing was many of my family members had gone to the University of Wisconsin. And my father was, to the day he died, a huge Wisconsin alum. Loved it. And my sister was there. This was in the early 70s, 74 so. And if you know anything about Wisconsin in the late 60s, early 70s, it was quite a radical place, very active in the anti-war movement and so forth. And we went to visit my sister, and my father looked around at his campus and said, I am not sending another child to this campus. And so I was quite upset because I had always expected to go there. And we had driven out from Virginia. And so on the way back, my dad said, there's this college in Ohio that somebody who works for me went to, and he's always talking about how great it was. So he said, let's stop there. And I was, I was your typical brooding teenager. And I said, kind of didn't say much. And we drove through Oxford, as I said. And from the minute I saw it, I loved it. I just loved it. I knew it was for me.
That's so sweet. That's wonderful. One last question. This is for me. How did you meet your husband? Is it a Miami love story?
It's another great story. My father was in the insurance business and knew a family in Dayton who was also in the business, who coincidentally, my mother had known the man from when she was growing up in New Haven, Connecticut. And my mother said, well, you're going to get a call from this family to invite you to Dayton for Rosh Hashanah. And I didn't like that idea very much. And so the Mrs. Sakes called me and she asked me to come, and I said, no, thank you. And so when my mother heard that, she was really mad and said, she's going to call you for Yom Kippur and you are going to go. And so she did. And she said, my friend's son is going to pick you up. And it was my husband.
Oh my goodness, Jewish mothers. How was that telling her that not only was she right about going to the dinner, that because she was, you met your husband? Oh gosh.
It was great. And I'm forever grateful for that. And for getting the opportunity, to obviously marry him, but move to Dayton. And really, it's been a wonderful career and wonderful place to raise my family and my 2 great kids. And I have to say, my 3 adorable grandchildren.
And you just had you have a new grandbaby.
Right. I have 7, I have 4, and I have 3 weeks.
And where does everyone live? Is still in Dayton?
2 in Atlanta and 1 in Columbus.
Okay. We'll deal with Atlanta mostly because that's where I'm from, so it's okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. Debbie, what is good contact information for you?
Well, my email is feldmand@childrensdayton.org. So it's very easy. So that's probably the best way to reach me, and we can go from there.
And Maddie, as always, you're incredible. Thank you so much for taking this on. And if you want to know more about Women Crush Wednesdays or all of the programming that Hillel provides, feel free to email me at whitneyf@muhillel.org. We are launching a new website at the end of the month, so soon I'll be able to give you that. And you can also follow us on Instagram at I always do this, Hillel at MU, HILLEL at 8, see, no, so many letters, HILLELATMU. Okay, Jessica Cantor will hopefully not be mad at me our Instagram account. But we are so grateful, Debbie. Thank you so much for being
here, for
giving of your time, and for all the work you've done on behalf of our community. We are grateful. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Nice meeting you, Maddie and Whitney.
It's nice meeting you as well.
Thank you. Stay warm, everyone.
Yes. Bye-bye.